Where do toxic and harmful emissions come from in power production? This will be the next discussion. You are very welcome to participate in this session. My name is Merja Mäkelä. The EU countries agreed to reduce greenhouse gases 20% by 2020 and total 40% by 2030. Renewable energy should cover at least 20% in 2020 and 27% in 2030. Principally, consumers get their energy from centralized large-scale production and from distributed small-scale production. Energy is converted from one form to another. We mostly need heat, electricity, and mechanical movement. This is a power production model. We need either fossil or renewable sources. Heat, electricity, or movement are produced in a power production plant or engine. We may also get emissions and waste. Besides heat, electricity, and movement, we may get harmful emissions and waste. Energy production may have also some other environmental impacts. Next, we'll discuss emissions when fossil fuels are used. The combustion of coal makes toxic and harmful emissions such as sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, and heavy metals. Also, persistent organic pollutants are possible. The combustion of heavy fuel oil makes toxic and harmful emissions such as sulfur dioxide, particulate matter, and heavy metals. Also, persistent organic pollutants are possible. In combustion engines with petrol and diesel, we get also toxic emissions such as nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, heavy metals, and persistent organic pollutants. Natural gas is mostly methane. In the combustion of natural gas, we don't get any significant harmful emissions. Also, the carbon dioxide emissions are less compared to those of oil and coal. From nuclear reactions, we don't get any harmful or toxic emissions, but the radioactive fuel waste makes processing and storing problems. The combustion of peat causes toxic and harmful emissions such as sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, and heavy metals. Also, persistent organic pollutants are possible. Next, we'll discuss emissions when renewable fuels are used. The power generation based on water resources does not make any toxic or harmful emissions. However, the harnessing of waterfalls and rivers changes the environment. In wind turbines, the generation of electricity from kinetic energy of wind does not make any emissions. Sometimes harmful noise effects or scenic inconveniences may be present. Solar radiation generates electricity in photovoltaic materials without emissions. Sometimes solar panels may be considered as harmful scenic arrangements. Heat can be produced in solar thermal collectors. This kind of a production facility does not make any emissions, but scenic inconveniences may disturb some citizens. We get harmful and toxic emissions from the combustion of wood, particulate matter, black coal and persistent organic pollutants. Ashes can be used as soil amendment. In some regions, wood resources are limited. The large-scale combustion of wood-based materials, sawdust for example, makes harmful emissions like particulate matter and persistent organic pollutants. As an advantage, waste wood can be utilized. Biogas consists mostly of methane and carbon dioxide. The combustion of biogas does not make any significant harmful or toxic emissions. By combusting, manure and landfill gases, for example, can be utilized. The combustion of waste makes many toxic emissions: sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, heavy metals and persistent organic pollutants. However, the combustion and recycling are feasible ways to deal with municipal waste. The combustion of black liquor in pulp mills produces a lot of energy but also harmful emissions such as sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides and particulate matter. Due to combustion and further processing, needed chemicals can be recovered. The combustion of hydrogen does not bring any toxic or harmful emissions, but this kind of energy production is not widely used yet. Most challenging is to make and store hydrogen in a profitable way. The EU Directives 107/2004 and 50/2008 set basic limits to toxic and harmful emissions. The emissions should be measured, monitored and controlled. Also, greenhouse gases should be measured, monitored and controlled. The Directive 50/2008 give limits for sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter, lead, carbon monoxide and benzene. The limits are given using 1 hour, 24 hours and 1 year average values. The Directive 107/2004 gives limit values for cadmium, arsenic, nickel and benzopyrene. The limits are given using 1 year average values. The combustion of fossil fuels always makes additional greenhouse gases. Also, the combustion of some renewable sources, such as waste for example, produces toxic and harmful emissions. There are methods to reduce emissions. Thank you for your attention.